Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Mile High Game Guys board gaming podcast. I'm your host, Adrian.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Jeff.
And we are here for another Mile High Game Guys discussion. We are launching off the first part of a new series of discussions that we're going to be doing regarding board game components.
382-part series.
Yeah.
Yes.
Obviously.
We're going to focus on a little bit of everything.
10 parts is just going to be how much we hate paper money.
Yeah. There's going to be so many discussions about the bullshitness of paper money.
10 hours straight.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
we're going to go through every game.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to list every game that has paper money and describe how to either fix it or just burn the game.
Yeah. It'll be like, fuck you. Millennium Blades, you're cool. Fuck you.
Yeah. But this one in particular, we're going to focus mainly on your player pieces in games. Zach, what do we mean when we say player pieces?
We're talking about the workers that you place in worker placement. The figures, physically controlling the area in area control. Even the things you move in roll and move. They are the physical manifestation of your influence on the game board. These typically have three forms, more or less. Wood/plastic abstractions, cardboard standees, and miniatures.
Yep. So this discussion kind of came about thanks to one of our listeners, Joe, who got a hold of us on Twitter as part of our Lisboa giveaway and suggested that we discuss the proliferation of miniatures in board gaming. And although I've got some opinions on that, we felt that there was a little bit more that we could have to the discussion than just talking about minis. And so we kind of talked amongst ourselves. And that's where we came up with the idea for this series to talk about board game components. And we decided to do a series because obviously if we tried to talk about board game components as a whole, it'd be a ridiculously long, like 40-hour episode, which nobody wants.
I think we could go until like hour 32, and then for whatever reason we'd accidentally start a loop back and we'd start talking about these again, and we'd just forgotten that we'd talk about it, and it just would go forever and ever.
It's like, didn't we talk about this already? I don't know. I want to die.
It's the episode that never ends.
Like all of our episodes.
And on my yeah, so instead we decided to break it up, and we figured that, you know, your player pieces is a good starting off point. Pretty much every game out there has some kind of physical representation of what you're doing in the game. And like Zach said, these can take on a ton of different forms. Typically those three that he talked about, but I mean, sometimes it can even be like a player card or a little cardboard token or, you know, a vast number of things. So to kind of start things off, quick poll around the table. Do you guys have a preferred way for a board game to indicate your player piece? Like, do you prefer one of those three, like the minis, the standees, or the wood plastic figures, or something like that? Or does it vary based on games and why? Like, kind of what's your preference? Where are you coming into this discussion from?
I have no big preference. It can really be anything, because standees work well, meeples work well, some meeples suck, but some meeples are better than others. It's true. It's fact.
I mean, but some standees suck, some minis suck, a lot of minis suck.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's
as long as it's not sucky.
Yeah. I mean, even if it is sucky, I mean, you just whatever. It's the piece that is there that makes me know that my thing is there.
Okay.
I don't have a real strong preference of what I would like.
Would it depend on the type of game that you're playing?
No.
Okay.
Maybe standees. I don't know. I think standees have like a good art representation on them, and it's less abstract of what it is, and usually standee art's pretty good.
Yeah,
I like standees.
All right, so Jeff says standees.
Yeah.
All right, it was a long, windy road to standees, but we arrived at standees for Jeff.
Yeah.
Zach, do you have any preferences or thoughts that you'd like to chime in on?
So I think for me, at least, it really depends on the game. Sometimes wood works better. Sometimes minis work better, and standees are a good compromise between the two a lot of the times. But I think it's just, for me, it really just depends on the situation, and it always feels a bit weird when, like, I have minis, like fully detailed, super specific minis in a worker placement or something like that. But also, if I have like wooden pieces in combat, or you know, in where you're fighting other people, it always feels a little bit too abstracted and stuff like that. And I do like standees. I do wish they were used a bit more. I mean, we can get into them later, but I definitely think that they are a good compromise a lot of times for price point wise. So
right on. This is one of those, like, hopefully this makes for interesting discussion because I'm kind of in the same boat as you guys. It really depends on the game. Like there are times where minis feel very appropriate, but there's times when it's like, oh God, why are there minis in this game? You know, and vice versa. Like sometimes it's like, you know, oh yeah, I don't mind pushing a bunch of wooden cubes around. But then other times it's like, man, this just makes this game feel so blah. Like, why is this all that there is?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it does very much depend kind of on the game and the theme and the rest of the kind of aesthetics around that game as to which is preferable. I feel like a lot of times for me, though, I tend to lean towards, you know, like simple wooden bits. I don't like plastic bits. I don't like plastic player pieces. Like, you know, Pandemic or like Forbidden Desert. Like, I'd rather have wood. Something about wood has a little bit better of a tactile feel for me. But otherwise, you know, I tend towards that just because I tend to prefer function over form. So I go for what works the most, but also keeps it the most affordable, which is often like simple wooden pieces. But I can appreciate a really nice mini in other things.
Did we want to start off then by talking about wood and I guess like wood and plastic and those sort of abstractions?
Sure. So starting with those, you really see those a lot in Euro style games, you know, and like it was definitely I feel like those are something that they were first. Like that was where like a lot of pieces, well, maybe not.
No, they definitely weren't first, but
Ivory was first.
But I mean, like as far as like, because yeah, you're right. Like they weren't first because, you know, like you can go back. If you go back far enough, you get into like hand carved wooden bits for like chess pieces and stuff that are almost more minis, but then they're still a wooden piece. You know, or like D&D had minis, you know, like old school war games and stuff like Jeff style. I'm trying to blank Warhammer, you know, that had like ridiculous minis and
it's only gotten more ridiculous.
That you had to assemble and glue together and things like that. So you're right. Saying that they were first isn't particularly accurate.
No. Well, I think what's accurate is, like you were saying, they are form over function. For a lot of those games, they don't really care what your person looks like. They're just like, this is you. This shallow, small, roundish circle thing is you. And how do you tell you between another person? Oh, you're like this yellowish color and Jeff's green. That's the difference between you two. Is that
and in real life,
Adrian's a coward, and then Jeff is sick.
And what are you, Zach, in this scenario?
A mini, no.
A real nice miniature.
Yeah, really.
You know, well, I think it comes down to a lot of those games. You know, and this is where I think there's a difference in where it feels appropriate in some games. Like in Agricola, your player pieces are ostensibly your little farmers.
Yes.
You know, and that's a great example of a game where I've never had a problem with them being just the wooden discs because it's less that I'm like, I don't need to feel in that game the super thematic, like, oh, I've got my little farmer Joe and he's going to the market to get some wood. It's like, I'm collecting wood. Like,
what were those? Were those those expansions that had minis in them? That's what they were, right?
Agricola?
The ones that just came out?
Yeah.
Is it actual minis?
Yes.
Okay.
The ones that you're talking about there, they are the minis. They're like a set of 5, and they were really expensive for each set. And like it came with some cards, but not many. Mostly you're buying the minis.
Yeah, and then also it's only one color of mini. So it's like you buy the green expansion.
Yeah. Which, so, I don't...
Sorry, I just want to interject and say I'd love to be like, you buy one of these, and then you're like, these are mine. Everybody else gets these wood things. I get these fucking minis.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, like, looking at them, they look fantastic. Like, they look really good. The problem is that just, why? Like, Agricola doesn't need a mini. Like Like it's very much an old school action drafting, resource management kind of game where I don't need to put a farmer meeple on the space to feel like I'm doing that thing. And I don't, when I go to collect wood, I don't feel like I'm sending my guy to, like it might say that like that's the forest space or something. Like I don't feel like I'm sending it to that named space. Like that game is so abstracted. It's just I'm getting wood, and then later on, okay, now I'm going to this build fences. And so I don't need my mini to really stand out in that situation.
So when it's like when what you're doing is very abstracted, and that you don't need that extra quote unquote immersion from like a mini or even a standee or something, because you never feel like, oh, I'm going to go and get wood. You're just so like, I'm not sending this guy out to go and chop some wood, get some splinters, and then carry it back and then get some sort of rash from infected wood. If
we're gonna, if I wanted that much, if I wanted something that in depth, then every time I went to harvest wood in Agricola, I'd pull out onto the side, tick-tock lumberjack or whatever, tic-tac lumberjack, and knock off. I got 4 wood pieces. I don't
know. I feel like that's adding some randomness to the game that you would not like.
You're 100% right. But that's the point. Like you said it really well there. Like if the gameplay itself, if the mechanics themselves are abstracted away to where I don't feel that I'm doing the specific things, then I don't need the pieces to reflect those things that I don't feel like I'm doing in the first place. I find that really sets in for me with worker placement style games like Agricola. Whereas if you flip the script, we were playing Ethnos not too far back. Ethnos is a great game where it's like, I feel like that game it's a great example of it's not a great game in my opinion. It's a great example of the opposite, where the fact that I'm only placing these little plastic stacks to represent my presence just feels so lackluster. Like
it's because it's not wooden stacks. That's it, right?
No, area control is an excellent example where like I feel more area control like if I'm placing like little soldier pieces, and maybe that goes back to like playing Risk as a kid and like, look at all my soldiers that I've got in this territory. Don't you come mess with me.
Well, here's but in Ethnos, it's not about like with soldiers and stuff, like they're, you're expecting fighting. This one's just like, I've got more dudes than you do. Do you need, like, would you need more than that? Than just like, you just have a piece there. You're not fighting any of those pieces. You're just like, well, I've got me and my 4 buds. You've got 3 and your 3 buds. So we win. End of story.
Yeah. It's like, some West Side Story stuff. Like there's no fighting. We're just snapping.
So if the minis are snapping, then
But no, like Ethnos, I do actually feel like for me, the fact that I'm just building a little tower of plastic chips is like, it gives me a very whatever feel. I like,
especially coming from a company like Cool Mini or Not,
right?
No, they just went, no, not. We don't need.
We're not.
We're embracing the not side of our name.
Yes.
Whereas like Inish. Yes. Those are little simple minis. Like they're not very fancy, not overly complex.
Can we just talk about Inish for the next 45 minutes and how amazing it is?
No.
Okay.
But that's the one where like I prefer the minis. The minis help me enjoy that game more. They're not fancy minis. They didn't spend a ton of resources making them. They didn't drive the cost of that game through the roof because you've got some ridiculous warlord mini. They're
werebeasts or something.
They're pretty simple, but it helps with the immersion. And that like I've got a bunch of armies here, and you look, and it looks like a little army in that space.
And
I like that.
Yeah, and it's a lot more than just. It could be colored little wood pieces, but the game is a lot better because of that.
Yeah, I think the minis make that game better,
especially with the sanctuaries and citadels and stuff like that, where it even has little slots that you can put your guys in to protect them, and how the
towers over the citadel.
Yes.
To cycle back around though, because Zach, like we're ostensibly talking at this point about the wooden pieces specifically. So what about you guys? Like, so for me, it very much depends on like if it's an abstracted game, then I'm fine with abstracted pieces. What are some examples for you guys of situations where wooden pieces are adequate, or maybe where they haven't been adequate?
So for me, Game of Thrones, the board game.
Yes.
So So I'll color this and say, for me, it doesn't matter. Like between plastic and wood, doesn't really matter. It just has to be good quality.
Mm-hmm.
And so for Game of Thrones, those have like those little plastic pieces, but they feel nice. They look nice. And you're able to differentiate between the horsemen, the towers, and the knights or whatever they're called.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, you don't need more on that one, I think.
No, and especially like those are a good example of plastic done right, to where they look marbled, so they look more like they're not plastic.
And I think a lot of it also for me too, between wood and plastic, is also what type of game it is. And not only just what type of game, not specifically what type of game, but like sort of the theming of the game. So Pandemic, I actually like that they're plastic. That for whatever reason it works well with the like there are the diseases, and we're trying to that I feel like wooden ones, I feel like they just wouldn't capture it as well. Like because I've seen the first edition, and when I saw, because I only have the second edition one, but when I saw the first edition, I was like, oh, that just does not look, for whatever reason, it doesn't look as good for me. Whereas like with Pandemic Iberia, that one, because it's in the 1800s or whatever, for, like that one is like, well, obviously it should be wood because plastic didn't exist then. And that's probably why it's, it's okay for Agricola, because it's, it's supposed to be in the medieval time and all that stuff.
I mean, so for Agricola, for you personally, granted, Agricola is not a game that you like super love. Would you prefer like wooden meeples to flat wooden disc?
If they were meeples, I think right now is like, now that not only do we have meeples, but we have like, so Clank has meeples, but they are individual to the player. I feel like if it's not going to be that circle disc that they're trying to, if it's trying to make it more look human like or whatever, I feel like there should be some sort of differentiation between the players besides just the color.
Okay.
That I feel like it's easy enough to do now, that I just feel that, I don't know. I feel like if you're going to make some sort of effort, then you should make a decent amount of effort. Like in Tiny Epic Quest, like once they have those plastic meeples, but the item meeples, they're able to hold all the items, so you can, so all of them feel unique.
Mm-hmm.
And not only is it color, but it's like, oh, it's because I have this, I have the sword and I have
the bomb.
And I like that they started adding that into the game, and I'm looking forward to the more of the
Defenders
ones that have.
too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But overall, like for me, I'm fine with, for worker placement at least, if it's just the wood. And if it's just the wooden circle, but if you make a little bit of an effort, I feel like you can't just make just a little bit. If you decide to not just do the basic stuff, players should look unique, at least from each other and stuff like that.
Okay. Jeff, what about you? What are your thoughts on wooden bits and pieces and plastic, and when they do well, the really simple stuff?
Zach's opinion about Pandemic is completely wrong. The wood cubes are way better than the plastic ones. Everyone's gotten used to the plastic ones, but I started playing Pandemic when it was all wooden, and I appreciate the wooden ones. And when the plastic was in there, I was like, they're smaller, they're plastic. I want to use the wood ones. I'm sort of just looking through games that like where things are plastic and would be terrible with wood. Like anything with any differentiation in units, like War of the Ring. I mean, you could probably do wood, but dear God, how many miniatures are in that game? But they do it right in plastic. God, if that game was wood, it'd be a nightmare.
Well, so when we were talking wood and plastic in this instance, we're like the difference between the plastic of Pandemic and the wood of
plastic abstraction, like FS and stuff like that.
Not quite minis, because you're right. Like Lord of the Rings is a good example of a game that it damn near requires minis.
Yes.
Maybe standees, but the way they did their minis, I think works better, where they take up less space than a standee would.
Yeah. Yeah, like Lords of Waterdeep, where it's just basic colored cubes, which is more than enough for what you need.
What do you think about those D&D pulls?
I don't like them. They're acrylic, they're plastic meeples. Like if they were wood meeples, I would probably like them better, but they're plastic, and that's why I don't like them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the same boat. I really don't like plastic bits, especially like the shiny, glossy acrylic style plastic. If they were like some kind of custom shaped wood meeple, that would be pretty cool. But again, at the same time, so much of Lords of Waterdeep is so abstracted. I have no problem with it being cubes because I'm not ever like, oh, I'll take these 2 fighters. It's like, I'll take 2 red, I need a purple, and then I need 3 white.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that game's just abstracted enough, you know, it's not one where I feel the theme, nor do I need to. It's, you know, worker placement, the entry-level game.
Yes.
You know, it's...
Yeah, I don't... Okay, yeah.
You're looking at them?
Yeah, they look sort of silly, but not for me, not because they're plastic, just because, like,
They're also not a great design.
Well, not even just... I can't think of a reason, like... I don't know. If the game came with them, I'd probably be like, okay, it makes sense. And then if they're like, here, you could use these wooden cubes instead, you'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? Really? But because it is so, like, you just sort of get used to the abstraction.
And there probably is a lot to be said for that. Like, that a lot of these games, you are used to what they are. And so it's hard to imagine them as something else.
Yeah.
I guess that's why Pandemic with wood cubes is better.
No.
Yes.
I don't know. Wood cubes in a petri dish just feels weird.
Well, I don't think there was even petri dishes back in
No.
Oh, sweet.
First
So
edition.
it's another reason the second one's better.
I mean, the petri dishes are pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And you're right, the plastic fits better with the petri dishes,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd rather give up the petri dishes and have...
Really?
I don't know. Maybe.
You've
I don't really
confused
like
him.
Pandemic.
That's beside the point. We're not talking about whether we like these games.
Yeah.
Because I was talking about Grigula for like...
No, I know.
Minutes.
For whole minutes.
And I did not say how much it sucked once. So...
There you
Over
go.
and over and over.
So... Yeah, so I think that wooden bits and stuff, they're cost effective. Like, it's really easy to make
Mhm.
small wooden bits. So, you know, depending on what your game's trying to do, what you need the pieces to do, you know, that makes a lot of sense. You know, so like talking about Lords of Waterdeep doesn't quite fit with what we're talking because those are resources that are all the wooden cubes. You don't, you know, like your little player pieces,
Mhm.
you do have your little pieces there.
Yeah.
And those are fine as wood. They're little shaped wooden bits that, you know, you
that's true,
place
yes.
around it. And they don't need to be anything else in that game. They're like a little pawn to mark where you go. And I like that in a lot of games when they are like more, I prefer the pawns rather than it is like a little Agricola disc can be a pain to like pick up or they move around. Like I like having a little pawn like the robber in Catan or things like that you can pick up and move easily and that stands up and still has a presence on the board more than a disc does.
Gotcha.
But it's still simple and effective.
Which is why we need to replace all of the tokens in Terraforming Mars with plastic 3D printed stuff.
That's cool, but God, no, I wouldn't want that.
Can we make that box heavier somehow? I think that's the way.
Well, goodbye having an insert because those pieces won't fit.
Can we have like a 3D plastic printed for every card so it's like a unique pool that you'll just grab into and be like...
You grab 4, you like look at them, and then you just hand 3 to other people.
And
then
it's like, this is pets. That's clearly pets.
Yeah. It's
God,
a little dog.
Stop.
And it's just like, all right, I have these hand of 15 cards, and you just have a giant hand of just little mini.
You can do it, Internet.
Stop. Oh, God, please stop.
Oh, the aftermarket.
Yep.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yes, it is.
So then let's shift a little bit to the opposite end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about minis.
Okay.
So I remember like when I was all about them minis, like right at the height of my zombicideness, when it was like, yeah, give me some sweet minis. I've shifted a little bit. I can still appreciate them in some games, but a lot of other games, like I'll look at it and be like, just don't think you need it, man.
Right.
Like it's just driving up the cost, and like it's one of those things. Like it works, and I understand why it happens because like a Kickstarter flashes up some awesome looking minis, and people get that itch. They gotta buy it. It's like a drug.
People love minis.
Yep, I've shaken, but
yeah,
I don't know. They can be really functional, especially if for player pieces, like it's easy to do minis that are physically different.
Yes.
To where this is my unique piece that is me.
Mm-hmm.
For some games, if there's a little bit of an RPG element to it, then that can help for me. Like, to be like, yeah, like, my guy looks different. Like, you know, I've got a sword because I'm the sword guy, or I've got a bow because I'm the bow guy. You know, like, I couldn't imagine playing D&D.
So is that a class? Sword
cubes.
Guy and bow guy?
That checks out.
Checks out. I'm abstracting as I do.
Mm-hmm. Dual classing. I got a sword and a bow.
Jesus.
You use the bow to shoot swords.
Yeah, now you're thinking like a ranger.
But yeah, I couldn't imagine playing D&D with wooden bits. Like, I like having a mini that at least vaguely represents my idea of what my character is.
And I come from like old school where minis, maps, what? No, everything's in your brain, man.
Ugh. It sounds like a lot of work.
It was a lot of work.
I know for me, for minis, in order for me to actually want minis, there has to be some sort of combat in some way. So your earlier thing with Ethnos, you thought minis would be good for that. I feel like for me that they'd be just superlative.
Superfluous?
Superfluous, yes, that's what it was.
Superfluous.
Not superlative.
No. As soon as I said, I was like, no, that's the wrong one. It would just be unnecessary because it's not any, even though it is area control, it's not very combative. It's just I'm sitting here and you're also sitting here. So I think that's where the like just the discs themselves are fine enough. But if that same thing was in Blood Rage or in Inish or in like Rising Sun or whatever, that it just would not be the same.
What other Eric Lang games would you like to reference?
The others?
Yeah, the others, yeah.
Dice Masters.
Yeah, that's the one.
Chaos in the Old World.
Yeah, Chaos in the Old World. I wish people liked that game more.
I mean, I wish it was a better game.
I think the people just need to be better at it.
I hate to say Adrian's right. I wasn't a big fan, but
this is going to turn into just an excuse for us to bring up a game that has a mini so we can either praise it or trash it.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic excuse for ripping on games.
Right? Yeah. But like you said, minis are great when you are able to be like, these minis look different than these minis because these are my minis and these are your minis.
Yeah.
And I think the addition of adding like those clips at the bottom for those figures have been, I think that's really great because I feel like before, like in a lot of those other ones, it was just like, if you're the blue color, you have to be this person or whatever. Like these minis, and I know sometimes it just gives you a little bit of that customization of like, you get to do your favorite color, but then also you get to be these minis that you want as well. And then also like that, you can add the, like for Blood Rage, the monsters that you hire, basically, or recruit or whatever it's called in there.
Yeah.
So you don't have to like have a bunch of different Krakens. You'd be like, I just got the one Kraken, and then this game it's mine, or next game it's Jeff's or anything like that.
What do you think about minis, Jeff?
How about painting those minis?
Nah.
Some people are like, I have to paint everything. Everything must be painted. Why do you have minis and they're not painted?
I prefer painted minis. I am very rarely willing at this point to dedicate the time it takes to paint minis. Like, I never got good enough at it to where I could just bust out a bunch of them in a hurry. And I've always got other things I'd rather do than just sit around and paint minis.
I used to not have time to do anything.
You still do. You just
yeah. I have a lot of miniatures. I have a lot of painted miniatures. I have a lot more unpainted than painted, and it would be very daunting to try and paint like all of my board game miniatures on top of playing games and having a podcast and going to weekly board game nights and a job.
Yeah.
It was easier when I didn't have a job.
Yeah. A lot of things get easier when you don't have a job.
Oh, that's true.
Except spending money.
Except
that
money.
gets harder.
Yeah. That's why you just make your parents buy everything.
I wish they would.
like rent. Mom, can you pay rent?
Yeah.
But like Ant like needs to paint everything. Like he has an obsession. Like why aren't your minis painted yet? Every time we bring out a game that has minis that are unpainted. But some people like Greg and Kyle, all their shit's painted, and it's all painted fucking fantastically. Yeah. Their Blood Rage is amazing.
It is.
Very true.
Fantastic.
Because when they are painted, well, they look fucking awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's where minis can really stand out, is that with a good paint job and like in the right like setting with the right art style and everything behind it, a mini can pop and it can really grab your eye as it comes by. And I think that's why they work so well for Kickstarter, because you can, you know, as a game manufacturer or designer or whatever, you have your minis, you get them professionally painted, and then you show them off in a bunch of pictures or even just artist renderings of the painted mini, you know, and then people look at like what it could look like and they get all excited. And then the vast majority of those people will never paint their minis and will never have them look anything like that.
They are incredibly detailed.
Yeah. For
the most part. And that's why those Kickstarters are like nuts.
Yeah.
But there are minis that are like, no, I'm not going to paint these, like Inish's miniatures. Like they're too small. They're too bendy. Like War of the Ring you could probably paint, but it's still like...
Oh man, they're still so bendy.
Yeah. And small. And there's a lot of them.
Yeah. No. But just like there's times when wooden bits don't feel appropriate, there are times when I feel like minis don't always feel appropriate. Mm-hmm. And an excellent example of that is a game I've been really wanting to get to play for a long time, Anachrony. Like, it's this heavy worker placement game that out of nowhere each player has like 4 big honking exosuit minis. And I don't feel like they need to have minis. Like, I get that it works well, especially like you put your little cardboard piece in the mini to go out and do things, because then your thing's in the exosuit, so it thematically fits. But I just feel like there could have been a better way to do it that didn't need to have plastic minis in a heavy worker placement game like Anachrony.
I don't know. That seems pretty cool. You know, like, because they're actually using the physical space of the mini to put something inside of it and to represent that it is an exosuit. I think that in that instance it works. I thought it was just like, granted, I didn't look too deep into it. I thought it was just like, here's a big thing that's your worker and that's it. So I was originally going to agree with you. Oh, that's pretty cool. I like that. No, I think that works well.
God damn it.
If you'd have been like, Anachrony, it doesn't work there, I'd have been like, yeah, you're right. It's just pieces.
Yeah, whatever you say, Adrian.
Yeah. You had me until you actually gave me information. That was your fault.
Damn it, I just need to remember to keep people uninformed and get them to agree with me.
Yeah, there you go. Now you're playing politics.
Yes, exactly.
You know, and I don't know, I haven't actually played Anachrony. Like I said, it's one that's very high on my, like, I want to play list. So maybe they work really well in the game, but just when I think of a heavy worker placement game, I don't think of a honking big exosuit mini as being something that needs to be in that game. It seems off. I'm trying to think of other games that have minis that...
I mean, they could have been smaller.
Yeah, they definitely could have been smaller.
But it's okay that they aren't.
At least they'd be easy to paint. It's hard to paint small things.
Yeah, I know for me, just to go on the mini painting thing, it doesn't... I have so many that aren't painted, and I have zero interest in painting any of them. And then Ants will be like, why haven't you painted any of these? If you want to paint them for me, feel free. But otherwise, I don't care.
For no dollars.
Yeah, for no dollars.
Because that's how many dollars I care.
Yeah. If you pay me $5, I'll let you paint these.
Yeah, I'll let you borrow them to paint them for me.
Can either of you guys think of games that really stand out as that have minis that you don't feel that they need them, that it's just excessive?
How many miniature Kickstarters have there been in the last year and a half?
Well, so rather than a lot of those, I just don't think the game themselves need to exist because people look for a...
Because I was going to say all of those.
Yeah, and those just the game themselves almost never needed to exist. I'm trying to think of a game where it's a really good game that's fun to play that has minis that would be fine without minis.
Joan of Arc.
I don't know. I doubt that.
How many demons?
That big dragon needs to be... And I'm sure it's integral to that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know with minis, like, so Eldritch Horror because it's like it's a bigger scope and you like there's a lot of spaces. It's just standees basically for everything more or less. Whereas like Mansions of Madness has minis. And especially some of the more the more the scarier ones are a lot bigger. And it's nice. Minis are great for giving you that sense of scale that like you obviously don't feel any you're not scared or anything like that when you're fighting something in mansions, like physically or whatever. But it's
I regularly feel terrified fighting a big fucking thing in Mansions of Madness.
For whatever reason, your staring is just like
no,
it's just like is distracting.
Because I'm excited because you're right. Like I see where you're going with this, and I agree.
Yes,
I'm getting excited.
That basically it's just they give you a sense of scale when you have something that's very foreboding that you sort of lose in Eldritch Horror. They're just like you're fighting and I can't even remember the fucking thing right now. A Shoggoth in there, and you're like, okay, but you fight a Shoggoth here, and you're like, okay, that's a lot bigger. That's like taking up the entire room that I'm going to be in. All right, let's do this.
Slightly more foreboding instead of it just being a little cardboard piece.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, and like, this is where I was getting excited and apparently distracting you. So I was like,
because you were just like,
my face was like,
let me look directly into your soul while
it's, you know that gif of like Shaq doing that like twisting thing. Your eyes were doing that for whatever reason. I was like, what is going on?
Giving me the crazy eyes, and I don't know if I need to keep talking or stop.
But no, where minis are great and where I do really like minis is exactly what you said there. They give you a sense of scale that lends itself really well to thematic games. You know, like whether it is Mansions of Madness, which is one of my like favorite thematic kind of almost role-playing games. You know, a lot of the randomness in that game doesn't bother me because I get so into the theme and the story, and it helps that like, you know, even the little guys are like horrifying, and you imagine this little horrifying bat creature flying around, and you're like, no, just no. And then you come across this huge thing, like you said, it'll take up a whole room, and you're like, oh shit.
You're telling me I have to go through there? Yeah, that's where you have to go. All right, well,
this is gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt real bad.
Yep.
You know, and Zombicide did the same thing for me a lot of times. I liked that they added in some, you know, since like Left 4 Dead, the video games, like some of those zombie types have become kind of tropes, like big, hulking, mean, tough zombie and splatter zombie and whatever. But like being able to see that represented in a physical mini worked really well for Zombicide. You know, and then especially as they got a little off the rails because it's Cool Mini, and Cool Mini gets off the rails when it comes to minis. You know, they ended up having some ridiculously huge, you know, abomination type minis in some of their later Kickstarters that were just ludicrous.
Well, Black Plague especially got real bad with that.
But it lends a certain thematic presence to a board to have really well done minis. And I think that's where minis can do a lot of good. Which is why you don't need them in Agricola, because Agricola's theme is... I
really want to get a sense of how big those pieces of wood are compared to the guy that I'm sending to go pick it up.
Yeah.
Can I like send? I know there's child labor in there, and I can be like, I want my kid to go pick up that. I want to see him struggling.
It's not a job.
Jeff, what are your thoughts on minis before we get too derailed here?
Yeah, I've just been staring at miniature pictures. Some of them are pretty badass. Like, there's some fucking amazing miniatures out there. Like, there was one that was basically a crocodile that was like a part centaur, and it had like machine guns.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what game that was from, but it was pretty badass. But a lot of times those are like, all right, put another $35 in, and you can get this fucking expansion that will have these miniatures in them whenever we ship them in a year and a half.
So that actually brings up something that I wanted to touch on before we moved on, and it can sort of move on to standees too. Is that the main con of minis is the price point.
Yeah,
they're expensive,
especially to get the good, high quality, you know, varied, huge minis that everybody wants. It's good. It's going to make games more expensive. So I definitely think it's...
That's why we have a lot of this week's $100 miniature Kickstarter.
Exactly.
And I think
that price right up.
Yeah, like Zombicide, I don't know, series of games. They just make millions and millions of more dollars each time that they do them. Even the Game of Thrones miniatures game did a fuckload of money. I mean, partially from the license, but stuff like Kingdom Death Monster, like their whole fucking business model is like, all right, $80 for this crazy, and they're all fucking phenomenal miniatures. Everything on the design of those and how just fucking creepy they are.
Yeah.
Fits that universe so well, but it's just so expensive. And like I waited in line at Gen Con to go buy some fucking dice.
I remember, yeah.
And but the money people were dropping to get some of that shit was crazy.
Yes.
But it helps that they're actually, pretty awesome. But I mean, how many categories did they add of that $1,666 pledge? Because it kept selling out over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
gee, like fuck.
And then there are some people like our friend Ant who will sometimes buy games and not give a shit about the game. That literally they're just buying it for the minis.
It's like, do you see the fucking minis in that thing? Of course I'm gonna back it.
Yeah. But what do you think about the game?
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, and I think that, and this is where, like we said, this conversation kind of stemmed from somebody asking about our opinion on the proliferation of minis and board games. And this is where I think that it can start to be a negative, is because there are a lot of games, the $100 Kickstarter game of the week, that don't appear to be good games, that sometimes they have great minis, sometimes they have mediocre minis, but they're still charging ridiculous prices. And they're just, it gets to a point where I do feel like it's starting to get to be too much. I don't think that we're in some board gaming bubble that's going to burst and we're all going to go bankrupt because we've, leveraged all of our finances into board games. Like, it's not a housing market that's going to wreck everything. But I do think
So I shouldn't be on my third mortgage?
I mean, you have to buy more board games, so yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's different. The housing market's stable. Your mortgage is fine.
Oh, sweet. Yes. That's good.
Yes,
it's not even my house too, so it works out great.
Because I'm certain that the house right across the corner from me is really worth $750,000. I'm certain of that. That's real value that's not going to ever go away.
God.
But I think that, and I think that minis can sometimes be a little bit distracting from like the overall
being a good game.
Yeah, like there are good games that get just buried under minis, and then it's hard to get to the game because all the minis just get in the way.
And then it can also make a mediocre game look better.
Yeah.
If you just have enough, especially on Kickstarter, because you don't have to put that you really don't have to put that investment on the outset to be like, here's everything you're going to get. Now pay me a shitload of money. If you be like, here's the idea of what it is.
Yeah. and that's the kind of thing that can turn people off. Like, somebody relatively new to gaming backs a Kickstarter because it looks like it has great minis and, it looks really cool and everything. And they get it and it's a thoroughly mediocre, if not garbage game.
Right.
Then they're less likely to kickstart a game in the future. That might turn them off of gaming entirely. They're like, oh, this is what games are, this shitty piece of crap with a bunch of plastic pieces in it. I'd much rather people focus on making a good game, and if your good game is something that's got a place for minis, if it's a really thematic game like a Mansions of Madness or like Imperial Assault or, Zombicide, something that like, and even Zombicide's not that great of a game. Like, it gets by because I love zombies so much and like the theme of it fits what I want from a zombie game. I don't expect some mind-boggling top 10 game that's zombie themed. Like, that's just not what you should expect. But there are good games, and there's examples of games that have minis that do well with them.
Gloomhaven.
Yeah. Well, Gloomhaven leads nicely into speaking of standees, because it ties the two together. So I'm gonna reference back around because I'm gonna ask about how you feel about combining different things. But let's talk about standees for a bit. Jeff, you in the preamble to the discussion mentioned that you think you like standees the most of these options.
Yeah, I think Dead of Winter probably has used standees like to peak effect. Like if you had that many, I mean, you have enough zombicide miniatures, you could probably use real zombies in that game instead of the zombie standees. But I think the art comes a lot better across for theme via standees because they're not all just sort of blank plastic. A lot of times you actually get art and in the art style of what the designers want. They're all usually pretty good quality. I mean, it's been a long time since I've played Candyland, but I'm sure that used standees too.
I believe it did.
Yeah.
It hasn't been that long for me comparatively. No, wait, that was Chutes and Ladders. Never mind.
Close enough. But Gloomhaven had a bit of controversy when it came out because people were like, I don't want to pay extra for the minis. Can I just get cheaper and get standees? And then some people are like, fuck you, you should have made all of those monsters miniatures on top of that, which I think is a little bit too far.
One, that box would weigh 50 plus pounds.
There would be another box.
It would be another box. It would be, another box of that size.
Yeah. Just for the miniature storage.
And it would be ridiculously priced. It would be
many hundreds of dollars.
Yeah. I think, for those, I think those standees work really well.
So much so that I even ordered the standees for the heroes from the second Kickstarter.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is, like, I think Gloomhaven's a great example of a game where the minis that, like, having the combination of them show that it didn't need minis in the first place. Standees work very well in that game.
But I will say having the combination actually, I think, in my opinion, at least works well because there are so many standees there that it's nice that, like, you don't have to accidentally lose your character in a pile of guys because your characters are all minis, so you always know exactly where you are in relation to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I think unique player bases could have helped with that too. Like if there were specific bases for the player characters versus like I can't remember in Gloomhaven, are they like clear plastic ones or are they black?
No, it's
white and yellow.
White and yellow, depending on.
That's right.
Yeah.
Standard or elite.
Yeah, that's right. So if you had the white or yellow for your monsters, and then you had individual player colors that weren't white or yellow, then you could still pretty easily know at a glance where your person is.
I don't know. I really like the fact that it's a combination of the two. Also, it helps that Ant painted them.
Yeah.
So that I'm a little bit biased in that too.
Yeah. And they're good minis. Don't get me wrong.
Yes. There's a lot of standees in that game though, because you can swarm those dungeons with monsters.
Yes.
A lot of the same monsters and stuff like that, but it would be, God, if this game was all minis, would be insane. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Dead of Winter is probably my best like standee game.
Yeah, Dead of Winter does a great job with that.
It's City of Horror does the same sort of thing too. And in fact, it's zombie too, where it's nice to be able to do a swarm of things, but still having it at a decent price point.
Yeah.
Standees work well for that.
But like we had referenced before, the Heroes of Lancian Air Kickstarter got relaunched because there was a whole bunch of like, it's kind of expensive and kind of shipping, and like, I want minis, I want standees, and then in the middle of the campaign, they're trying to like throw those options out there via feedback, like for giving people options, because there is a ton of minis and standees in Heroes of Lancian Air that we saw at Gen Con.
Yeah. Well, I know for me at least, I think part of that was when I watched a preview of the game being played online, it was the preview copies they gave out were standees, and the art, the art they used was good, and it was all like, oh, these look nice. And then when the actual game came out, it was just like, oh, it's a bunch of minis. Well, this seems really expensive, but the standees seem to work just as well. And so I think that's why they offered, or enough people were saying that. It was just like, well, can't we just get those standees that you're using? Those looked really good. And I like for what it was. I liked it, especially at the price point.
I don't have to paint those.
Yeah. And so then they tried to offer it, but then not enough people chose it when they had the chance, and so when they relaunched it, they're just like, we're not gonna listen to you. No, we wanted this to be a minis game, so it's a minis game.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, that made me go like, I don't want to back it now.
Yep,
but
that cut a lot of my interest out of it. You know, I feel like, so comparing standees to minis, you know, you mentioned Dead of Winter, Jeff, and I really like Zombicide as a minis game, and I like all the minis in Zombicide, but I don't feel like Dead of Winter would be better with minis because, again, the way they play, the mechanics of the games, like Zombicide, I like having the horde of minis that moves around and does different things, and they kind of split and move. Whereas in Dead of Winter, a lot of times, like the zombies themselves, like they're just being placed in like their little spots.
They just appear there and then aren't. Yeah.
And so, in that case, I'd rather have like something simple to place there that has the art. I don't have to worry about painting it or doing anything cool with it. It's there, it's already done, and it matches. You know, and same thing with the player pieces in that game. Like, you're not moving your pieces around quite as much as you do in like Zombicide, where you're running over this huge map. You're like going to a few locations and you're just picking it up and placing it in another spot. And so that's a good example of where, again, the mechanics of the game, and so much of this to me comes down to like, what kind of a game am I playing? What's going to be best? I do think that standees are better in Dead of Winter, whereas like minis are better in Zombicide, and I can't imagine switching those around.
No. Well, I think part of it too for Dead of Winter is that you're controlling multiple characters, and two, you need to know, like, if they were all mini based, then unless you painted them, it could be easy to confuse some of the other, some of them with others. So you'd have to make them look vastly different. Whereas if you have the standees, you know that they're in this area, and it is easier to glance at them and be like, okay, well, this one's mine. Especially because like you can easily reference the card that you have, like, because isn't that what it, like, each time you get a new person, they have like a player card. Yeah. And be like, this art matches that guy over there. That's mine. It's easy to connect them together. Another one, the Grizzled. You have standees because all you really need to show is that, and that was introduced in the expansion, wasn't it?
The standees, yeah.
Yeah, it was basically I'm in versus I'm not in.
Which was harder to tell before.
Yes, and so adding those standees, that's all they need to do. And the art they use is really great. And so it was a way to use that, because I don't even know, like, it'd be really weird to try and make a mini using that art style.
Oh, yeah, you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
At least... Unless it was pre-painted or something. But.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it too, is that minis can't go as crazy in art as just standees can.
No.
So
because it's,
something physical versus something that's just, painted.
How fancy do you want to get with your artist?
Yeah,
exactly.
And a lot of art styles don't lend themselves to physical reproductions. Like,
very true.
We just reviewed Argent, and like a lot of anime art styles don't lend themselves very well to actual physical minis. And same thing like Chibi is another great example. Like Chibi art style, I'm not a fan of. Chibi minis really make me mad. They're so damn top heavy with their big stupid heads.
I have some friends that would disagree with you.
Yes.
But
I'm sure a lot of people would. Chibi, as with any art style that exists and is popular, like, there are people who like it. Thus it being popular. I'm just not one of those people.
You're not one of the cool kids.
Clearly.
So yeah, standees.
They're pretty great.
I paid extra for Gloomhaven ones, even though I had the minis already.
Yeah.
One downside to standees that is kind of unique to them compared to either the wooden/plastic bits or minis is they are more fragile. Your plastic minis, like, if they're bendy, it might mess with your paint job, or maybe their sword looks saggy and sad, and then, like, I guess wooden or plastic bits you could break. Like, you could snap an Agricola disc in half somehow, but it's very unlikely to happen, I think. Whereas cardboard standees, putting them in and out of their standee bases. Like, I mean, I've had some, even just putting them in the first time can damage the standee itself. Not to mention that
Gloomhaven's monsters that you constantly do that with. But their stands for the standees are actually pretty nice.
Yeah, they're a lot better than Eldritch Horrors.
Or Dead of Winters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Dead of Winters, like, they pretty much just stay in them, right? Or do you actually take them out?
No, mine all stay in them. Like, it depends on how you organize your set. But yeah, I just left mine on.
Well, with Eldritch Horror, like, there's no way to really do that. Well, I guess if you don't storm like I do, which is, the bare amount needed as possible.
You're not a lazy piece of shit.
Mm-hmm. No. I don't even just mean that. I like the next box I add from Elder. It's gonna be the third box.
Yeah,
because it's just 2 boxes chock full of things that they always give you enough plastic things on the bottom
to hang yourself with. Just enough to hang yourself.
That would be impressive.
Yeah.
Hang yourself with a plastic piece.
Yeah.
But they give you enough to put them on each of the standee ones. You can. God damn it!
I keep saying once.
I know. Yeah. They give you enough plastic pieces to put at the bottom of the cardboard character, portraits or whatever. But then that starts to take up way too much room. And so I have all of the cardboard portraits in a box basically, and then I take the plastic pieces, put them on. But like you said, it's like every time I take them on and take them off, it makes
the way that they work.
Yes, exactly.
Everyone should have standee bases like Gloomhaven does, where it's just kind of a nice little clamshell sort of lip on there that just slides in and slides out and doesn't damage the bottom of the cardboard at all.
Very true.
So, to kind of start to bring this towards a close, we've mainly focused on the 3 main ones that we talked about there at the beginning, the wood plastic bits, minis, and standees. What do you guys think about other kind of less common things, like a cardboard piece or like a player card?
I think cards, for me at least, they work the same as standees in terms of, like, as long as there's space for it wherever you're putting it. It's mainly there to add the art, but without the the cost of minis and stuff like that.
Okay. What about you, Jeff?
Like a player card? What's an example of what you mean?
I feel like no. I can't think of one on the top of my head, but there are ones where it's like your figure or yourself is a card and you're moving that card around.
I'm not sure if I've played a game that uses that at some point that I can really remember.
As Zach, like I know I've seen it, but I am drawing a total blank.
I'm sure it sucks.
Your corporation card in Terraforming Mars.
Yeah, just move that around the board.
Okay, so what about like cardboard bits or things? Or what?
Like tokens and things?
That'd be the same as wood and plastic for me. So
okay.
Unless it's a sweet war game like Twilight Struggle.
Well, then there's not a singular piece representing you.
None.
Yeah, so it gets out of the scope. Right on. Well, I don't think I have a whole lot else to say about.
Clearly, standees are the winner here, and miniatures are expensive, and wood and plastic are economical
and functional.
Unless they're plastic meeples that don't hold items, and then then I don't like them.
True. Very true. Well spoken. Sage words, Jeff.
Indeed.
If they work until they don't, and then I don't like them.
Yes.
Just to summarize.
Yes.
I do think that for me, for across all of them, it really depends on the game and the mechanics and the art and the entire situation, which one's going to be best. I lately, having gone down the heavy game rabbit hole, the vast majority of games I play these days are wooden pieces and cardboard bits rather than big fancy minis, and even standees aren't super common in the Euro economic side of things. But when I do play thematic games, I do like minis and standees and things that lend the art and presence on the board that standees and minis can really do for you. So I think they all have their place in the industry. I think that finding the right balance and finding the right one for the right game is a tricky thing that designers and producers need to be aware of. So
vital.
Yeah. I don't know. Any other things you guys want to add on to that? Okay. I take your resounding silence as a no. Then that lets us move on to our BGG thread where we have some responses from some listeners. So, Zach, you got those ready?
Yes, I do. So Eric says, I think standees are underrated. They are cost-effective and great at showing off detailed artwork. They also don't require being painted.
I think I said all of those things.
Yep.
I agree with all of those things.
Definitely true. Yeah. Is that it?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, that's all the things we just said.
Eric, we agree.
Those are all the things we said about standees, like that we just talked about. Like they are. I do agree. They are very underrated, and I think they should be in more games. Next up, Zach.
All right. Next up is Chad. Chad says, I don't think one type of component is necessarily better than another. Wood components, done in a generic style, work just as well as highly detailed miniatures or artistic standees. But I will admit that detailed components help a game stand out. The detail given to Mechs vs. Minions, the pre-painted ships in Xayah Legends of a Drift system, even the wood resource tokens in games like Scythe, Food Chain Magnet, or Stone Age are impressive. Of course, there's a base level of quality we've grown to expect. I can tell when plastic, wood, cardboard, or cards are of shit quality. I admit sometimes my opinion of a game is somewhat tainted because of it. Miniatures can help immerse players in the game, particularly in thematic games. It's hard to imagine playing X-Wing without the detailed ship minis, even though it's entirely possible. I would definitely agree with that. That's
yeah.
Yeah. Especially when it's all movement based like that. That would just be weird. Like I had Warhammer Disc Wars, where you're just moving discs around, and there was definitely something missing because you're just like, I'm flipping this disc, hit this disc. Okay, well, all right. This orc disc is mad.
Disky disc fights.
Yep. I think standees do just as well, i.e. Dead of Winter, but where I run into a problem is when they're mixed. For example, Gloomhaven, where the player pieces are miniatures, but all the monsters are standees. Unless you were smart and also got the player tokens as standees.
I got it the second time.
Or Eclipse with its tokens for structures, plastic for ships, and wood for economy, hopefully alleviated in part by the upcoming second edition. This is also a good opportunity for board game pimping. Agricola is way better with the Anna meeples and carrot-shaped wooden tokens. I think the newest version may come with these things, but the older version required a third-party purchase of replacement components.
False. There was a first-party replacement.
That's true, yeah.
Yep. Which I have.
My favorite component in a board game is the Battle Tower and Shogun, also featured in Wallenstein/Amerigo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what he said there.
I disagree about the Gloomhaven, but...
Yeah.
No,
we didn't really talk about animeeples. Square shapes versus animal shapes.
Because that will come in a later discussion, because this one was specifically about player pieces.
Oh, that's true.
So
not resources.
Not resources.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I kind of...
So you fucked up, Chad.
That's why I kind of tried to pull us away when we started talking too much about Lords of Waterdeep. But he's right, even for player pieces alone, like, it's a good opportunity. Like, if you don't like what piece your game has, look around on the aftermarket and see, you know, what third-party people are doing. You know, nowadays, you can find stuff on Etsy, you can find stuff on BGG, like, that replace components that you don't feel are good and that other people don't feel are good with something that maybe fits better. So yeah, it definitely gives you an opportunity to make your game a little bit more your game.
I think for Gloomhaven, it's still having the mix is nice because, like I said, you can always tell which one's yours.
Yeah.
No matter how, like if there's just, like we said, a swarm of them surrounding your character, even if the bottom base, like if it was a standee and the bottom base was a different color, if it was just completely surrounded by other ones, you'd be like, mine's in there, right? I'm sure. I think it's in there. I'm fucked. So if you see the mini, you can just be like, I know for a fact I'm fucked.
Yeah.
Because there's just everything, and they're all ranged, and I'm going to die.
All those arrows are about to go directly up your ass. Up your ass.
Yeah.
Zach really hates when the status of his fuckage is ambiguous.
Yes. Yeah. I need to know quick. I got to prepare. You don't want to get surprised by that.
Surprise, you're fucked.
That was my, entire time in the military. It was just one constant version of, hey, surprise, you're fucked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, can you give me a list of all the times I'm going to be fucked for the next 2 years, please? And thank you.
Anyway, the last comment here.
Last one is from MHGG.
Sure.
Okay.
That's what it is now.
MHGG says, standees can be really helpful for including extra information, such as the numbers on monsters in Gloomhaven, or the battle ratings in games like Cannibal or Here I Stand. I'll take his word on those last two. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, no, that's been a big issue with the latest reprint of Hannibal as they switched to minis, and the previous standees used to have all like spaces where it had like the different combat information and things that made it really easy to clearly see it when you're playing. And the minis, they were going to like etch it into the base or do something with like a ring around the base, but it didn't look like it was going to work.
Gotcha.
So no, I know that's been a big problem with Hannibal. I don't really know about Here I Stand.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
But I just wish they would consider a more durable alternative. They're often unstable and fall over easily. The plastic bases often break. In games where they have to be removed from standees, the cardboard will often deteriorate.
Yeah. I think Gloomhaven got their cardboard standees.
Yeah, especially because it's like like you said, it's a clamshell, but you also can you can spread it. It's got
a good lip on there, so you're not like poking anything with.
But I mean, you can push both the sides, and then it just falls out.
Yeah,
so you don't actually. There's no resistance.
Trying to hold it together.
I know.
The resistance is very smooth.
Yes.
I think a lot of those complaints with standees are pretty valid. We didn't really talk about that they are easy to knock over, but I mean, so can minis. Minis can be that way too. Like the way, they stand up and I knock over Zombicide minis all the time when I play Zombicide.
Mm-hmm. That's why they're just in big globs.
Yeah. I don't think I've had a plastic base break on any standees that I've had yet, but I could see that being an issue if the plastic wasn't very good quality.
The deterioration of the
cardboard bits themselves
much faster.
Very, very much a problem. And he made a really good point about them conveying extra information. I'd forgotten that there are a lot of standees out there that, you can include hit points or, movement actions or other information about what that piece can do right there in an unobtrusive way on the standee that you can't really accomplish with either minis or plastic or wooden bits. So, yeah, good points. So that wraps up our BGG responses. If you have thoughts on player pieces and what types you prefer, feel free to jump over to our Board Game Geek Guild number 2731, and chime in on that thread, and we will address that at a later date. I tweeted out the link yesterday evening and got a response, which this person has followed us for a while, and when they first followed us, I was like, wait, really? So it's Colfax, which those of you who are familiar with Denver or South Park will recognize the name Colfax because it's like our super shady, sketchy street here in Denver that really isn't shady or sketchy, but
anymore.
Whatever. But Colfax is one of the main DJs on the local rock station 106.7? Yeah, KBPI. And so he followed us a while back, and I was like, holy shit, Colfax is following us. That's kind of cool. But I figured it was just because we're Denver related. Well, then he chimed in on my post about what was the better pieces. And he says, clearly wood cubes is the right answer. So
I hate to lose him by saying he's wrong. It's not for everything. And you know what? Just hexagons, just to be like, no.
Wooden hexagons. But yeah, so clearly Colfax is definitely a Eurogamer, man after my own heart. Rock music and Euro games. That's where it's at.
Well, there's not a lot of metal getting played during Euro games, I don't think. Or rock. Maybe some...
You don't mix... I don't mix all of my hobbies. I don't mix board gaming and rock climbing. I don't mix snowboarding and rock climbing. I don't mix...
I want to see that, obviously.
These are all things I want to see, though.
I want to see you hit a jump and then immediately hit a rock wall.
And then your board's still on. Like,
so clearly I'd just be campusing, which is a type of rock climbing where you only use your hands.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's
fine, because if you fall, then you can just go back to snowboarding.
Yes. I can see nothing wrong with any of these plans. I will just snowboard into a jump directly into a cliff.
Yeah.
And then just, if I fall, I'll just snowboard away.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I know what I'm working on at the condo this year.
Good. Yeah. See, you have all these problems. Me and Jeff are happy to help with solutions.
Just let the ski patrol know ahead of time, and they'll be there to collect your corpse at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So email topic for any random listeners. I want to know, what are your hobbies that can be combined in irresponsible ways?
Irresponsible ways.
Well, we already talked about horseback riding with gun shooting.
Yes.
They've been doing it in the West for so long.
Yeah.
We now have snowboarding and rock climbing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think for Megan, clearly it needs to be kayak knitting. That needs to be her irresponsible hobby.
So her paddle is just two
knitting needles.
Knitting needles. Okay.
So basically, she just...
Are they just like regular size ones, but with giant ass paddles at the end?
No, I think they're just... No, I don't think she has paddles at all anymore.
Okay.
She's just in a kayak going down a river trying to knit.
Okay.
So yeah, I want to hear more irresponsible hobby pairings that people might have.
I like it.
To wrap things up. So, yeah. If you want to email us, you can email us.
Emails at milehighgameguys.com.
If you want to tweet at us, I tweet under at MHGameGuys.
I am Zach_MHGG.
I am Jeff_MHGG.
And we have Facebook and Instagram /MileHighGameGuys. And we also have our Board Game Geek Guild number 2731, where you can participate in episode discussions, reviews, all of that stuff. And we are currently still running our giveaway for Lisboa, including the deluxe upgrade. There are 3 ways for you to enter. You can jump over to the aforementioned Board Game Geek Guild number 2731, where Zach has a post up. And in that one, we would like to hear about your board gaming group. We have talked about our Wednesday night game nights, our last Sunday Alamo game nights, all of the different gaming things that we do. We want to hear what kind of gaming you do. Who do you get a game with? When do you game with them? How do you game with them? All of that kind of stuff. We want to get to know you guys. The other way you can enter is you can send us an email.
Emails at milehighgameguys.com.
In case you'd forgotten that email. And on that email, we want to hear your board gaming disaster stories. Lisboa is all about rebuilding after a disaster, and so we want to know, what kind of disasters have you had related to board gaming? Bad players, bad games, spilled drinks, greasy fingers, whatever it is. We want to hear what your board gaming disasters are.
Just upended a whole bucket of chicken.
Right onto the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turkey wings.
Turkey wings.
Very true.
And then finally, you can tweet us at MHGameGuys. Include the hashtag MHGG thanks. And on that one, we want to hear what other discussion topics, like the one we just finished, you would be interested in hearing from us. You know, what kind of things do you want to catch our opinions on that we can ramble about for an hour-ish or something like that? Each one of those 3 entries gets you 1 entry into the drawing, and we will be drawing December 17th when we record and announcing December 20th. And so just before Christmas, you will know if you are the lucky winner of Lisboa from Eagle-Griffin Games, Vital Lacerda, and art by Ian O'Toole. Pretty fantastic game. Hopefully y'all enjoy it. Yeah, that wraps up the episode. Thanks everybody for listening. As always, I've been your host, Adrian.
I'm still Zach.
And I'm Standee Jeff.
And we'll catch you later. Bye.
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 That pen is really loud.
It is really loud.
That's weird.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to make sure it wasn't just me.
No, I mean, I heard it.
Okay. Yeah,
No,
try that
fuck
one.
that pen. I'll just write lighter.
All right.
Okay.
I'm just digging in.
Okay. Okay.
Pen cut.
The pen is cut.
Nice.
Yeah.
I can't
It's-
stop thinking about circumcisions now.
Well, the pen's been working out.
Yeah.
It's cut.
It's cut. Penis cut.
That's right.
That's what I was going for, Jeff.
Circumcisions are on the brain now. So
Better than on the penis.
Punchboard Media, where we all
Bring something
to the table
pull up a chair
at punchboardmedia.com.